When it comes to the city of Allentown, Pennsylvania, there's really only two things that a railfan needs to know. It's not a railfan-friendly city, and it's not an easy city to navigate, especially if you're unfamiliar with the area. East Penn Junction at milepost 93 is where the Reading Line running track branches off and skirts around the south side of the city and over to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, we start this adventure on the other side of the Delaware River in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. In its heyday, Phillipsburg was served by 5 railroads: the Central Railroad of New Jersey, the Lehigh Valley, the Lehigh and Hudson River, the Delaware, Lackawanna and Western, and the Pennsylvania Railroad, which also had a hump yard in town. Today, Phillipsburg is still an important location on the Norfolk Southern Lehigh line. With the junction of the ex-Delaware Lackawanna and Western Washington Secondary at CP Phillipsburg, as well as the big bridge over the Delaware River, the Washington Secondary is home of the Allentown-based locals, the H65 and the H74. Norfolk Southern also serves Phillipsburg using the former Lehigh Valley tracks and the Lehigh and Hudson River Bridge to connect with the ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Bel-Del line. The Bel-Del line to the north is now the NS Portland Secondary, which until a few weeks ago used to be the line that went to Portland, Pennsylvania to interchange with the Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad. Although Phillipsburg had once benefited from being a major transportation hub on the convergence of the Delaware and Lehigh rivers, long gone is the era of canal shipping and the railroads that became a part of Conrail, which bypassed the city on long-distance routes. On average, the Lehigh line sees 25 to 30 trains a day, with traffic being heavier in the evenings, during the night, and the early mornings. Traffic tends to peak from Thursday through Saturday, as usually being the busiest days with all or most of the intermodal trains running. South Main Street, aka the Black Bridge, is a great place to catch oncoming trains from either direction. The former C&J PU Tower is being restored and will eventually be open to the public, along with the former C&J/DLW Union Station. The Central Railroad of New Jersey left its mark on Phillipsburg with its large yard nearly a mile long and a roundhouse and a wooden coaling station which stretched across most of the length of the yard tracks. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of local historians, the remains of the C&J yard have been saved from years of neglect and can now be enjoyed as the Phillipsburg Railroad Historians Museum site. They have an N-scale diorama, 2 Lehigh and Hudson River cabooses, and a Jersey Central caboose. There's a Lehigh and Hudson River snow flanger, a Tidewater tank car, a C&J boxcar, a 1922 Chestnut Ridge Mack rail bus, a public service trolley, a 44-ton GE locomotive, and a 25-ton GE locomotive, plus they operate a miniature railroad, the Centerville and Southwestern, that formerly ran in Roseland, New Jersey. The history of the Allentown and Bethlehem areas is the history of the industrial development of a nation. The Lehigh River, called the West Branch of the Delaware River in the 19th century, had a fertile lower valley that helped to form a natural transportation route to the north and to the west. Canals were built along the rivers for trade, and Allentown became a center of the silk and garments industry. Other industries followed, and with the community thriving, the region became a manufacturing center. The Reading Railroad saw the prosperity of Bethlehem and bought the North Pennsylvania Railroad to gain access from Philadelphia in the south, and the Lehigh and New England built down from the north into Allentown and Bethlehem. Anthracite coal was 2 times more costly than bituminous coal, which is why the small hardcore roads got so wealthy so fast. After 1865, with the perfecting of the British Bessemer process of steelmaking, the U.S. and Pennsylvania had booming economies which allowed many of these small railroads to prosper, as Bethlehem was once the country's second largest steel producing plant. As times changed and steel became more important, the Bethlehem Iron Company bought out other local mills, and through affiliations and mergers, the company was renamed the Bethlehem Steel Corporation. Bethlehem steel products were commonplace in America and around the world. Bridges, battleships, skyscrapers, automobiles, trucks, cranes, and even steam locomotives. All of these products contain elements that were born at Bethlehem Steel. In fact, it's been said that 80% of the buildings in Manhattan contain steel from Bethlehem. Moreover, following World War II, Bethlehem Steel was a primary producer of the steel that helped to rebuild Europe after the devastation. By the 1980s, Bethlehem Steel was faced with declining business due to international competition and an aging industrial complex. By the 1990s, the company closed its doors in Bethlehem and focused their attention on a new mini mill at Sparrows Point, Maryland, and others in the Midwest. By the end of the 20th century, the Bethlehem Steel Mill was a rusted-out shell of its former glory, and like so much of Pennsylvania and the Rust Belt, it was a shadowy remnant of the area's former importance to the nation. In 1999, Conrail was split and the Norfolk Southern inherited all of the operations in the Allentown Bethlehem area. Today, the Bethlehem Steel Complex has become a growing transload and intermodal center and a luxurious sands casino. And even though most of the plant has been torn down, the primary blast furnaces remain. Today, the main line is part of Norfolk Southern's busy Chicago to New York City corridor, with general freight and intermodal traffic to and from the New York, New Jersey area, as well as other points on the compass. As far as rail fanning goes, the area between and including C.P. Byrne on the Reading Line, CP-87 on the Lehigh line and CP Ham on the upper Lehigh line form something of a triangle with the Allentown Yard in the center of it all. Looking west toward Allentown Yard on the north side of the Lehigh River, there are 3 tracks at this point. The track closest to us is the old main number 4. This is where NS often parks road power until their next assignment and is a great location to get detail and other roster shots of locomotives. Judging by the looks of the last ships here today, it's a good bet that this is actually a power balance move to Enola. The middle track is the yard lead to the receiving yard, and the track farthest away from us is the single track main between CP Bethlehem and CP Allen. CP Ham is named for Hamilton Street running over the tracks and is the northern boundary of the Allentown Yard. And while this is a great place to watch trains when you can get them, traffic at this location is limited to the 36T and 37T in the mornings and an occasional local or yard movement scattered about the day. So the lesson to take away is this: don't waste your time hanging around CP Ham unless you already know that something's coming. If you follow that road screen right along the canal, it will bring you to the west end of CP Allen. This is the west end of the Allentown Yard and where inbound and outbound trains to and from the west enter and exit. There's a picnic area with an excellent view of the bridge across the Lehigh River and has good lighting conditions for most of the day. The XCNJ Allentown Yard is a massive facility with dozens of tracks for every purpose. This is where the general freight to and from the New York City area is classified, as well as the originating and terminating points of those 36T and 37T trains that we see up on the Sunbury line. When Enola Yard was downgraded, Allentown assumed some of the switching duties performed there. This, along with the intermodal operations over in Bethlehem, has made Allentown Yard busier than ever before. Moving toward the east end of the yard is the Allentown Hump. And while this area is one of the few that is easily accessible to rail fans, what you see is pretty much what you get. It's a relatively slow-moving and boring place to hang around. CP Burn is named for the Auburn Street crossing within the interlocking. This is where the tracks split to go either into the Allentown Yard or bypass the yard and come out at CP Bethlehem. CP Burn used to be the most popular spot in Allentown for rail fanning. I say used to be because NS has gotten a bad and apparently well-deserved reputation for chasing people away from here, making Burn a place where you go to get a shot when you know something is coming, and then you skedaddle away as fast as you can. Trains leaving the yard are known to pull up to the signal and wait for their conductor to be brought ahead by a crew van, sometimes known as a jitney. From an operational standpoint, the 2 main line tracks converge at CP Allen and go directly into Allentown Yard. The reason this is so important is because it's very common for a dispatcher to set up meets between trains by running one train on the main line through the yard and another on the south side running track. On a less favorable day, the action heats up as a westbound intermodal train leaves Allentown Yard while an eastbound mixed freight comes into it. The reason the mixed freight is stopped is because of C.P. Allen. As I pointed out earlier, C.P. Allen is a conversion point for both of these tracks as well as the Upper Lehigh line. The mixed freight has to wait for the intermodal to clear the control point so that the train can enter the yard.
Bethlehem, Airport clear, 12:31, 1231 p.m.
Another eastbound, this time intermodal to New Jersey, illustrates the use of the running track around the Allentown Yard. The best place to actually see trains in Allentown and not get into trouble for it is actually not in Allentown at all. It's in Bethlehem over at CP 87 or CP Bethlehem. I personally prefer CP Bethlehem because not only do you get everything moving east and west on the main line, but during the right times of day, of course, you can also catch east and westbound traffic moving in and out of the east end of the yard. Today, fortune smiles as a Sunday-only 25W from North Jersey to Chicago comes flying westbound past our camera. Another reason for railfanning Bethlehem is the intermodal operations. This is where the auto racks and intermodals on the 36T and 37T trains originate and terminate. From here, the racks are put on another train to North Jersey, while the intermodals can also be taken to Jersey or offloaded right here in B-Town. Does this cut of containers look familiar to you? It should, because tomorrow it'll be running on the Sunbury line heading west to Buffalo, New York on train 37T. On a good day, you might catch the local power doing some of this work, but on a great day, you'll catch something even better. The locomotives are ex-Philadelphia, Bethlehem, and New England, which was the host railroad of the Bethlehem Steel Corporation when it was still in operation. Today, these in-cab workhorses provide some of the local switching for the Lehigh Valley Forge Corporation and even the intermodal yard itself.
65, you guys ready to go back?
Oh, they just went by us now.
As I said earlier, at the right time of day you can catch trains and power coming directly out of the yard. Today we see a short local with some unusual power at either end. And for the record, this is called a top and tail operation, not a push-pull operation. Push-pull is when you have only one locomotive on one end and have to push the train in one direction and pull it in the other, kind of like the commuter trains in Chicago and other big cities. This train will be making a reverse move and heading west on the running track. And as for those visiting Canadians, keep an eye on that 5643. We'll be running into him again shortly in the video. Back home on the Sunbury line, a few days have passed, most of the snow has melted, and a familiar face is making an appearance in Taylor. Actually, two familiar faces. Today, Train 14R is in Enola, Pennsylvania to East Deerfield, Massachusetts mixed freight. I say today because in a few weeks this train will be cut back to Binghamton, New York and will run as Train 16R from Bingotown to Massachusetts. And speaking of familiar faces, does anything in the locomotive concept look familiar at all to you? As the 14R's marker disappears to the north, it's time to close out yet another video. When the days are longer and the weather is warmer, we'll explore more of Norfolk Southern's main lines between Chicago and New York. Until then, for Trains 21, call me AC.